So who's heard of Haroon al-Rashid? Who has heard of the Arabian Nights? 1001 stories of the Arabian Nights. Okay, who has heard of Aladdin Ka Charagh? Everybody. So that is one of the great stories of the Arabian Nights. And this is a story in which one of the figures that's starring in this story is Haroon al-Rashid, the 5th Khalifa of the Abbasids. In fact, that work is such a great work of world literature that Haroon al-Rashid enjoys incredible fame, not just because of his politics, but even more because of that great literary work. He's always featured in that work as a kind, benevolent, really nice guy who walks through the streets of Baghdad dressed as a normal person and discovers and understands how people are living, cares for the people, etc. I don't know if that image is true or not, if that is the reality, but that is the way he is depicted in the literature of his time. This beautiful, amazing period is also known as the beginning of the golden age of Islam. So whenever we say Islam, Sunahira Daur Islam ka, what are we referring to? We're referring basically to the period of Haroon al-Rashid and his son Mamoon al-Rashid. Why is this considered to be, quote unquote, the golden period of Islam? Of course, the great period of Islam, the greatest period of Islam is the period in which Hazrat Muhammad, peace be upon him, sets up the state, right? And it expands. But why is this period known? What is this period known for? It's known for its art. It's known for its adab and literature. It's known for its science. It's known for philosophy. It is known for education. It is known for tib, in other words, medicine. It is a period in which this new civilization that has been built, which is also Arab, but now it's also Persian. It's Arab Mawali mixed. It's Arabi and Ajmi at the same time. They're mixed together. They're equal now. And so this Arab-Persian synthesis, really that's what it is. The Abbasids are an Arab-Persian state. This synthesis creates a flowering of art, culture, philosophy, science, everything you can think of. And the Arabs and the Persians, by the way, are also writing in Arabic. They're no longer writing in Farsi, they're writing in Arabic. They take to Arabic like a duck to water. They're like, okay, we are Persians, but you know what? We're going to learn Arabic. And we are going to speak Arabic better than the Arabs can speak it. In fact, you know what we're going to do? We are going to create the dictionaries that the Arabs will read to understand their own language. Yes, the Persians started writing dictionaries for the Arabs. Imagine that. Anyway, so this Persian-Arab synthesis, this new state, becomes phenomenal because it is able to take from the heritage of the Persians and is able to also take from the military organization of the Arabs, creating an incredible synthesis, an incredibly powerful state, but also a state which revels in knowledge. And that was its really fascinating thing. So it begins in this particular period. He is the son of Al-Mahdi, the 3rd Khalifa, obviously, and his wife was Al-Khizran, who is herself an interesting story. Why is she interesting? Because she was a slave bought from Medina and she married the Khalifa, etc. And by the way, all the Khalifas from this point onwards decided that it was better for them to marry slave women rather than to marry free women, because the free women, you know, they came with families. And then the families would say, you know, give me this and give me that land and give me this, etc. And that would create court intrigues. So stay away from court intrigues. Just marry a slave. You can, once you marry the slave, then she's no longer a slave, obviously. But marry one of the slaves. They all married slaves, with the exception only of 2 or 3 Khalifas. I'll give you the exact data on that, but it's fascinating. His mother, that is Haroon al-Rashid's mother, who was a slave woman, rose to be the queen, is one of the great queens of Islam, by the way. One of the great queens of Islam. One of the richest women to have ever lived in history as well. One of the most powerful women to ever have lived in history as well. And did many, many different sort of works, including fixing roads and other incredible things. Her own story is a fascinating story of slavery to the top position in society. Anyway, so he led massively successful campaigns against the Byzantines, earning him the name Rashid, which is rightly guided, like we say Khulfa Rashideen, etc., right? He's also known as Rashid. Harun also imprisoned and poisoned Musa ibn Jafar, the 7th Imam in Baghdad. He continued to fight many rebellions against his regime, especially of the Shia and so on. Family that was very close to the family of Haroon al-Rashid was the Barmakid family. The Barmakids were a very powerful Persian family. And the Abbasids were very close to them because they knew that to govern Iraq, they needed a powerful Persian family. In fact, it was said, I don't know if it's true, but it's said that the children of the Barmakid family and the children of the Abbasids, they would exchange their children so that the mothers that would nurse them would be from the opposite family, so that they would be considered brothers and sisters because they are fed from the milk of the mother of the other family. That is what was said. They were so close to each other. And the Barmakids, by the way, play a very key role in what we call the golden age of Islam, because they are the patrons, really. Haroon al-Rashid as well, of course, because he is the top man, he's in command, he's in charge, but his deputies are the Barmakids, etc. And they play the key role in the creation of the arts and sciences and creating these organizations like, for example, the House of Wisdom and other things like that. The Bayt al-Hikma, House of Wisdom in Baghdad, they were the ones who established it. The city, as a result, flourished as a center of knowledge, culture, trade, and so on. In 796, Haroon al-Rashid moved his court and government to Raqqa, which is in present-day Syria, which is pro-Umayyad. But after Haroon al-Rashid comes another civil war. This is the fourth fitna, the fourth civil war in the history of Islam. What happens is that he has two sons whom he loves, adores, dotes on, right? His one son is named Amin, and he is born to Zubaydah. Zubaydah is basically an Abbasid princess. Okay, she is Abbasid, pure blood, Arab, etc. And he declares Amin his heir in 791. But he also has another son, born from Mirajil, who is a Persian concubine. She's no longer a concubine, obviously, after he marries her and that sort of thing. But her origins are that she's not an Abbasid princess, she was a concubine. She was a slave girl. By the way, there's some incredible books I can recommend to you about slavery and women in that period, and the women slaves who would sing and so on. Incredible works on that as well. I'll recommend a few later. So he declared his son Mamoon also to be the second heir after Amin. So in Islam, there was no set system of which son would be the heir. It wasn't necessary, as was the case in England, that what we call primogeniture, that the eldest will be. No, the father could actually say, no, I want the second son or I want the third son to succeed me. He would have to declare that. So that was also something done. So Haroon al-Rashid now in 802 gave Khorasan, he made Mamoon the governor of Khorasan. And in fact, he made a pact between the two brothers. Amin, don't bother Mamoon, and Mamoon, you don't bother Amin, etc. and so on. And in addition to that, he thought there's going to be some trouble, especially with the Barmakid family, with whom he's very close. But now he decides they've got to go. Why have they got to go? Because there is going to be civil war after I'm dead. I can control the situation, but once I'm gone, the Barmakids are going to make a try for power, etc. I can't afford that. So the Barmakids fall. He has many of them arrested, executed, including Mamoon's tutor, whose name is Jafar. He is also executed. So the Barmakids fall at the end of that period. Amin stays in Baghdad, and Mamoon goes off to Khorasan, where he builds his support. But in a real strange twist of fate, it should have been Amin, if there was any civil war, who should have won, because he was in control of the main army. And everybody expected Amin to win. And Amin was not a bad Khalifa. He was good. He was in control. He was a brave man. All of those things. He was not corrupt or whatever, or terrible or anything of that sort. But Amin tried to, well, it's said, some historians say, Amin tried to assert his control over Khorasan. He tried to impose certain taxes. He said, oh, I need my spies, etc. You have to give me a network of spies. And Mamoon said, this violates our agreement, and so on. Each blamed the other side. Finally, there was a war. And shocker of all shockers, it was al-Mamun who wins. Al-Mamun also had a brilliant advisor. By the way, if you ever get into a situation where you have to fight for the Game of Thrones, you have to play the Game of Thrones, my recommendation to you is to get your Tyrion Lannister next to you, because your Wazir makes the biggest difference. He had a brilliant Machiavellian level guy who tutored him in how to win. And he said, listen, lower the taxes. Listen, you sit personally amongst the people and you solve their problems, be the judge. And listen, stop all this rubbish about I want the best horse and I want the best camel and I want to live in the best castle. Adopt poverty, live like the people, etc. Become, popular, etc. So Mamoon started becoming hugely popular and so on. Anyway, he won. Now Mamoon wanted somehow to bridge the gap between the Shias and the Hashemites that had built up, right? He was not happy that the Abbasids had been fighting the Shiites. So he said, he invited Imam Ali al-Raza, or Ali al-Rida as the Arabs say, and he named him his heir. He said, after I die, the Khilafat will go to the house of Hazrat Ali. It will go to Imam Ali al-Raza, Ali al-Rida. And in fact, he gave his daughter in marriage to him, al-Habib, etc. He said, marry my daughter and you'll have children and you'll create your own family and that family will rule and all our problems will be solved. Shia-Sunni conflict, etc. All of that will be solved and we will be united, etc. No children resulted from that marriage because Imam Ali al-Rida was 20 years older than al-Mamun. So sadly, he passed away. And many people say, in fact, that he passed away precisely because al-Mamun poisoned him. So this is another very important aspect of it. Mamoon also declared as state doctrine the superiority of Ali over Hazrat Abu Bakr and Hazrat Umar, and he punished anyone who would praise Muawiyah in any way. He also restored and reversed the judgment on Muta, which Hazrat Umar had changed from the time of the Prophet. Muta is, of course, temporary marriage. And he said, okay, we're going to go back to... Hazrat Umar stopped it. He said, no, we can't do this temporary marriage thing. But he said, no, we can, because this was practiced in the time of the Prophet, so we'll go back to it, etc. He abandoned the Abbasid black, and now he adopted green, which was the color of the Shiites. And when he came to Baghdad with green banners, you can imagine what the Baghdadis said. They said, Mamoon has gone Shiite, and this is a big problem. And they were not happy with Mamoon at all. So Imam Ali al-Rida died in 1818. Mamoon was in a military campaign with him. The Shiites say that he was in fact poisoned by al-Mamun, although I personally find that theory not to be entirely convincing, because as soon as Ali al-Rida died, Mamoon then said that Ali al-Rida's son will marry Mamoon's daughter. So he married his other daughter again. But by this time, Baghdad had been seething in revolt. Mamoon never built his capital in Baghdad after the civil war. He built his capital in Merv, in Khurasan. By 1819, the situation had become ungovernable. And Mamoon recognized that he had to move back to Baghdad to take control of the capital, babe, sit in your side of the empire. So he moved back in 1819 and he reconciled. He said, okay, we won't move in this direction. And, we will stabilize and we will rejoin everything and so on. So he reconciled with the Baghdadi elite and gave up this project of marrying the two families and somehow healing that particular split. Now, Al-Mamun, what was he like? He was one of the most highly educated Khalifas that Islam has had in its entire history. The man was absolutely a voracious reader and loved knowledge and loved people who knew anything, which of course means that he wouldn't have loved me, but khair. In the middle of a battle, here he is fighting the Byzantines, and he would sit down in his tent and he would say, let's figure out the circumference of the earth. Let's figure out how big the earth is. If I was to travel around the earth, how long would it take me? And crazy things like that, right? In the middle of battles, he was constantly in his tent talking to these sorts of people. Highly educated, he belonged to the Hanafi mazhab, you could say. And if you wanted to find an intellectual philosopher king, it would be Al-Mamun. He promoted the translation movement. He said, we're going to translate and publish everything, all knowledge, etc. Algebra was invented in his time, and all the most incredible things really invented in his time, because he would shower money on anybody who would be ready to do research and writing and everything like that, etc. Right? And he also supported Mu'tazila thought, etc. So he had, either he had or his successor had Imam Ahmed ibn Hanbal incarcerated. We're just going to look at the Mihna in just a bit. But he also undertook large campaigns against the Byzantine Empire. And he reigned from 813 to 1833. So 2 decades he ruled. Now, he got into a major conflict with the ulama at one stage of his career. Mamoon wanted to create a unified kingdom which would not only stretch to all the corners of the earth, but would intellectually also include all the great things from all the great civilizations. So if it was something that was created in India, he wanted it. If something was created by the ancient Greeks, he wanted it. If something was created by the Persians, he wanted it. Something was created by the Arabs, he wanted that. Something was created by the Syrians, he wanted that. Didn't care where it came from, it all had to come together, because this was going to be the intellectual heart of the world, not just of the Arab world, of the world. So he tried to create a state narrative which would embrace all of them. The Persians, of course, the Greek Byzantines, he said, the Byzantines have become corrupt. This is the fascinating thing about Al-Mamun. He said, listen, we understand the philosophy of the Greeks better than the Greek-speaking Byzantines, who have become totally corrupt and Dakiyanus and so on. We will take from their heritage and develop it further, etc. They have forgotten their own heritage. Let them mire in their ignorance. Falsafa, Shiaism, etc. He wanted all of it united in this grand synthesis, etc. In 827, he declared that the Quran must be revealed, created in time, in other words. This was a Jamist point of view, Jamia point of view, which was quite popular or common, let's say, in that section or in the east of the empire, because Jamia was another revolt at another time, much earlier, against the Umayyads. So those ideas were very much prevalent. Baghdad ulama, of course, revolted. The Baghdad ulama, anyway, were very pro-Amin and anti-Mamoon. So he instituted the Mihna in 833. Interestingly, he declares this doctrine in 827, but he declares the Mihna in 833, which is 6 years later. And just by coincidence, 4 months later, he himself passes away after declaring that. And the Mihna becomes more extreme under Al-Mutasim, who is his follower. Ahmad ibn Hanbal is imprisoned and flogged. What is the Mihna? The Mihna is, do you agree with this doctrine or do you not agree with it? You just had to answer in a yes or no. If you answered, no, I don't agree with it, then your name was struck off the list of people who could appear in court to give testimony, etc. You were no longer a reliable, you could not hold office, etc. You were taken off of that list and so on. You were not a trusted alim-e-deen, etc. If you answered yes, okay, good, fine. So this was not a general test of everybody. It wasn't like the Spanish Inquisition, which was horrible. This was a test of some specific people. In fact, Mamoon, in his 7 letters, he even named the people. Isse ye sawal karo. Okay. So the Mihna ended more or less with Al-Mutawakkil. That was in 861. His reign was from 846 to 861. And it's a very interesting story, which I think I'll tell you in a little while, not right now. Because it's coming up in the next slides. What happens as a consequence of this to Islamic political thought is really fascinating. The Mihna has the result that Al-Mamun says, listen, I am from the family of the Prophet. I am your chosen Khalifa. I have fought wars to come to power. God has favored me in those wars. I have created a synthesis of the best knowledge from around the world and given you this golden period, and indeed it is a golden period. I'm exaggerating a little bit here and there, although he was not prone to understate his views about himself. And therefore, it is up to me, it is my duty to make sure that the Ummah is going in the right direction, it is saved from error. And I see it going towards error. And the error is that some people have started saying that the Quran itself is uncreated. If the Quran is uncreated, it would mean that it has always existed and will always exist. It would mean that there are two beings that are co-eternal. That the Quran is eternal and God Almighty is eternal. But this is a duality, because only that thing can be eternal which we consider to be God. Only God is eternal. The Quran is God's words. It is His speech in another sense. So God has to exist prior to His speech, just as you would exist prior to your speech. And so if we accept that these two things are co-eternal, then we are engaging in the same error in which the Christians fell when they said that God is a Trinity. They said it's a trinity, we are saying it's a duality, and this is taking us away from Tawheed. Tawheed says God is one, and He alone is eternal. So this was his point of view, and he thought this is very strong ground, I should win, this is very obvious, etc. But shockingly, he lost. People, Sunni Islam in fact said, no, the Quran is uncreated and Mamoon is wrong. And they flocked to Ahmad ibn Hanbal, who at first refused to accept that the Quran is uncreated. And then he is flogged until he falls unconscious, and he says, while I was unconscious, I may have said that the Quran is created, but I was unconscious, I don't know what I said, etc. I have no recollection of it. And the crowd of Baghdad, who was always very supportive of Amin, who wasn't such a bad guy either, they were with Ahmad ibn Hanbal. They were not with Mamoon. And so there was a big crowd that came out in his favor, and he was released from prison, and that in a certain sense meant that the Mihna had not been successful in winning over the public, etc. So what does this mean? What was at stake? On the one hand is the idea of whether the Quran is eternal or created. That debate is now over. Nobody debates that. I mean, you go to some religious website and they will say that it's a sin to say the Quran is uncreated. Okay, they will say that. They will say, ye bahut bada fitna hai. But generally this is never debated. This is not a debate. I'm sure most of you not even heard that there was such a debate in Muslim history. But what was debated, what was at stake was the fact who would be the right authority to determine whether or not Quran is created, uncreated, what it says, what it doesn't say. Who is going to be the authority? Is it going to be the Khalifa, who's the Imam? Is he going to tell us what is right or wrong? Or is it going to be the ulama? So in this conflict, what the new consensus that was created after the defeat of the Mihna was that the political head of the community will not be the religious head of the community. Yaar, ye itni important baat hai ki I cannot emphasize it enough. Ki the political leader, who is the Khalifa or Imam, is also the person who tells you what is correct Islam, what is not correct, what is right and what is wrong. But now the situation has dramatically changed. This is 827 we're talking about, right? A century and more, in fact, 2 centuries after Islam. Today, the contention is it's not going to be the Khalifa who tells us what religion says or does not say. Who is it going to be? It is going to be the scholar, the Al-Mamun. It is his job. So what is the Khalifa's job? Khalifa's job is then to do the politics. What's in the politics? Do your wars, okay? Go fight the Byzantines, we support you in that. Make sure the roads are not, there are no robbers on the roads, we support you in that. Make sure that everything is in order so that we can do our prayers and we can order our lives in accordance with Islam. Yes, that is your job. Make sure taxes are collected. Yes, that is your job. Make sure that the proper people, the administration runs well, etc. That is your job. All of these things are your jobs. Administration is your job. Politics is your job. But religion is not your job. Whose job is it? To explain religion, to understand religion, to keep it alive, to interpret it, to debate it? The ulama. Please note, this is a separation of church and state. State is going to do one thing, it's not going to get terribly involved in religion. And the religious establishment is going to be a separate establishment of scholars, and they are going to not get involved in politics. They're going to tell you what religion is and isn't. But they're not going to go around telling the politicians how to do their wars. Although, of course, both are interconnected, but both now have autonomous spheres of work. It's a division of labor that emerges. So the religious community itself is also characterized by the fact that it is decentralized. It's based on many, many schools of thought. Now, we will discuss this a little later, comes also the rise of the Turkish slave soldiers. Al-Mamun wanted good soldiers, and he was relying on the Khurasani soldiers for a long time. But he started to also say that, we can get those Turks to fight with us, because the Turks make really good warriors, and the Turks really pride themselves on being great warriors. So he took a few, etc., but Al-Mutassim built up a retinue of freed slaves, Turkish freed slaves, who were independent from the Khurasani troops and also from the ulama. Why did they do that? They did that because the slave soldiers, these are slaves, okay? They are slave soldiers. Whose slaves are they? They are the Sultan's slaves. They are the Khalifa's special slaves. Special soldiers who only answer to one man, and that man is the Khalifa, nobody else. He buys them. He sets them up in a garrison, etc. They are separate from society. So they are completely under his command and loyal to him. What about the Khurasani and the Arabs? Yeah, they keep fighting with me and with each other, and they say, ye kar do or wo kar do, and they make a fuss. So I'm going to get these special soldiers from Central Asia, Turkish soldiers from Central Asia, who are just going to be under my command. Sounds like a great plan, doesn't it? Except it all goes wrong. In the time of Al-Mutawakkil, the slave soldiers, in fact, became so rebellious that they effectively took power in 861. They killed the Khalifa of that point in time. Why? They wanted money. It was just they wanted their salaries, etc. They weren't being paid on time. They went into rebellion, and thereafter the slave soldiers more or less ran the Khilafat in the mid-9th century. So when we talk about, what was one of the reasons why the Muslim rule, kind of went downwards, etc. Well, one of the reasons was slavery. Slavery. Slavery undid the Muslim rule because we relied on slaves for so many different things. The Muslims started to rely not only on the slaves to cook their food and to prepare their meals and to make their clothes and to fan them and all kinds of other, feed them grapes and so on, jobi, everything, play music for them, entertain them, blah blah blah, all that stuff. They even started to rely on slaves to do the fighting for them. And once the fighting was outsourced to the slaves said, hey, we're doing all the fighting, so we have the power, they don't. So this marked the effective end of real Abbasid power, which is in 861. Of course, the Abbasids remained nominally in power till 1258, till the Mongols finally came in, but effective power the Khalifa no longer had. The Khalifa just became, for the last 200 years, like a figurehead who really did not have any real effective power.